Good evening and welcome to Current Issues. I'm your host, Hesham Tillawi. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Rumsfeld. Just going to tell you a little bit of what he wrote 2 days before he resigned, and then we'll move on to today's show. In the first hour, we will have Dr. Mohamed Miraki. Dr. Mohamed Miraki been on the show before talking about Afghanistan and the depleted uranium in Afghanistan. Today we are going to talk about a book he has written, just published. The name of the book is Afghanistan After Democracy. We will be speaking with him and see what the book is all about. And in the second hour we will have Ted Pike. Ted also been on the program before, and he's going to talk about hate laws. If you remember, earlier this year, hate laws, or actually about probably 4 or 5 months ago, there was a bill that was introduced in the Senate, trying to introduce several hate laws, and Ted Pike was one of the champions in defeating these laws. So we'll be talking to Ted about this and see what these hate laws are all about. But let's go back to Rumsfeld. It is funny. It really is. 2 days before he resigned, Donald Rumsfeld submitted a secret classified memo to the White House that basically acknowledges that the Bush administration strategy in Iraq was not working. I think that was his strategy too. He said, in his view, I don't know where I'm going. Where am I going? On one? Okay. No one's telling me anything here. Okay. He said, in my view, it is time for a major adjustment. He's talking about Iraq. In his view, it's time for a major adjustment. What was it that he was telling us that we are doing good and we need to stay the course in Iraq? For the last 4 years, what happened? That was all a lie too? Just like the lie they told us before we went to Iraq? He also goes on to say, he said, announce that whatever new approach the United States decides on, the United States is doing so on a trial basis. This is the Secretary of Defense, ladies and gentlemen, speaking to the White House and telling them that in his view, whatever we're doing in Iraq is not working. We could have told them that 4 years ago. They didn't listen to us. 3 years ago, 2 years ago, we've been telling them that all along. Whatever you're doing in Iraq, it's not working. It never worked. We went there, destroyed the whole country, and in Afghanistan, to bring democracy to the Afghanis and the Iraqis, and it doesn't work. It's not working in Afghanistan, it's not working in Iraq. So now Rumsfeld, before he resigned, 2 days before he resigned, he was saying that what we're doing is wrong. And he said we need to announce a change, but he really wasn't sure what change we need to announce. So he said, let's announce a change. And whatever new approach the United States decides, you see now, before it was his decision. Now he's saying, whatever approach the United States needs to decide on, it needs to be on a trial basis. That way, this will give us the ability to readjust and move to another course. So they're not really sure of what they want to do. So they're saying, let's try this on trial basis, and if it doesn't work, we will have a readjustment, but we don't know what the readjustment is going to be. This is our Secretary of Defense that has been taking our boys and girls to war A war that he himself does not even know what the heck he's doing there, and he has no clue what to do from here. This is the kind of government we have, ladies and gentlemen. On a major thing like this, they take the country to war. They take the country to war, and what happens is they don't know what the heck they're doing that for. Okay, I'm going to read to you a little of what a gentleman named Miraki Ritscher, R-I-T-S-H-E-R. Miraki worked in the Chicago area as a musician and recording engineer. But Miraki was more than a musician and recording engineer. Miraki was also an anti-war protester. On November 3rd, 2006, that's a little over a month ago, on the side of the Kennedy Express near downtown Chicago, Miraki held a small sign that read, "Thou shalt not kill." Now, in a letter, he wrote, "We have become worse than the imagined enemy, killing civilians and calling it collateral damage, torturing and trampling human rights inside and outside our own borders. We are more concerned with sports on television and ringtones on cell phones than the future of the world." Then Miraki set himself on fire. Self-immolation in protest to the war in Iraq. Self-immolation in protest to George W. Bush war on Iraq. "If I am required to pay for your barbaric war," Miraki wrote in his own obituary, "I choose not to live in your world. I refuse to finance the mass murder of innocent civilians who did nothing to threaten our country." But America did not notice. How many of the mainstream media, ladies and gentlemen, covered his story? How many? Is this the first time you hear about this? The man does not want to live in America. He would rather die and kill himself than live in America that is murdering civilians and innocent people in Afghanistan and in Iraq and elsewhere, in Lebanon and in Palestine. What is it? So to satisfy ourselves, we just need to commit suicide? To kill ourselves so we won't live in this world? No, maybe we can change. I don't agree with Miraki. God bless his soul. I don't agree with him. I don't think we need to kill ourselves. I think we just need to take our country back and put on trial these people who committed this. Put on trial the people who lied to us and still lying to us and still don't know what the heck they're doing there. That's what we need to do. We need to get George Bush, Rumsfeld, Richard Perle, Douglas Feith, Dick Cheney, all of these people, and put them on trial. Condoleezza Rice, Colin Powell, whoever was involved in the war, get them on trial. War crime trial. You want to do it right? Then do it right. Enough of this stuff that we are a great country. Enough of this. Enough of this. America is a great country, but not with this type of government. America is great with the people, with the great people that it has. So stand up and take the country back and make the country great again. Take our reputation back, because we had good reputation and it was destroyed by these thugs that we have in the White House. That's what we need to do. Okay, I'm going to, let's see, I think I'm going to take this one call and then we'll go to the guest who's patiently waiting for us. Go ahead. Freedom, go ahead.
Yes, Dr. Tillawi. Look, all I want to mention is several days ago I heard about the young man who set himself on fire in Chicago, and you're absolutely right. It was not mentioned on MSNBC, not mentioned on CBS, ABC, NBC, and definitely not on Fox. The way I found out about it, I went to the internet, and that's how I was able to get it, and I was able to read something about it in the Chicago Tribune. But the whole thing is this. I want you to give me your take on the Iraqi survey group or the Iraqi study group, because one of the 79 things they have for the president to do if he want to get himself out of the mess that he started in Iraq would be to privatize the oil field. James Baker, the consigliere of the Bush family, has recommended, along with the guy Lee Hamilton on the 9/11 Commission, and he was the chairman of the Iran-Contra investigation. The same people on the 9/11 Commission and these same Washington insiders, they recommend privatizing the oil in Iraq. So if we're going to split Iraq into three parts, the Kurds, the Sunni, and the Shiite, and they're supposed to supposedly split the oil revenues equally among those three segments, how can you privatize the oil and allow the nation to be able to split the profits from that oil among the three groups? So could you please explain to me why James Baker would have recommended to privatizing the oil in Iraq? And thanks very much.
Thank you. Number one, we have no moral authority or any authority to decide what happens in Iraq. We broke it and we cannot fix it. Number two, privatizing, that's something that the Iraqis should deal with themselves if they want to privatize or not. But I would say that with coming from James Baker and him being connected with the Carlyle group that is very much connected to the oil industry, I would say probably they see a lot of billions there and benefits that they would benefit out of. That's the only reason I can see by privatizing the oil in Iraq. But I really don't want to confuse the issues in Iraq, because the objective of the Iraqi war by the United States to Israel to use against targets in Lebanon will result in additional radioactive and chemical toxic contamination. This was written, ladies and gentlemen, at the time, a couple of months ago, a few months in August, when Israel attacked Lebanon, with consequent adverse health and environmental effects throughout the Middle East. Israeli tank gunners are also using depleted uranium tank rounds. Today, United States, British, and now Israeli military personnel are using illegal uranium munitions. America and the United Kingdoms own dirty bombs. While United States Army, United States Department of Energy, United States Department of Defense, and the UK Ministry of Defense officials deny that there are any adverse health or environmental effects as a consequence of the manufacture, testing, or use of uranium munitions, so that they may avoid liability for the willful and illegal dispersal of a radioactive toxic material. In other words, depleted uranium. The use of uranium weapon is absolutely unacceptable and a crime against humanity. Consequently, the citizens of the world and all governments must force the cessation of uranium weapons use. I must demand that Israel now provide medical care to all depleted uranium casualties in Lebanon and clean up all depleted uranium contaminations. American and British officials have arrogantly refused to comply with their own regulations, orders, and directives that requires Department of Defense officials to provide prompt and effective medical care to all exposed individuals, which is medical management of unusual depleted uranium casualties. And so it's the law in the United States that we take care of this mess wherever we make it. But of course, now we do have in Afghanistan, Iraq, Lebanon, and Palestine, depleted uranium is all over the place. And tonight, we're going to talk to Dr. Miraki. He's going to talk to us about democracy in Afghanistan. Remember, Afghanistan was before Iraq, and actually you hear a lot about Iraq, but not enough about Afghanistan. But we are still stuck in Afghanistan too. After, since 2001 until now, we still trying to bring democracy over to that part of the world. and do believe that Dr. Mohammed, are you with me? Can you hear me? Dr. Miraki? Can you hear me? I can hear him. Can you hear me? Dr. Mohammed, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Hello?
Yes, yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I could hear you now.
Great. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you. The voice is very dim, actually.
What about now?
Now it's better. Now it's much better.
Okay. Dr. Mohammed, tell me about your new book, Afghanistan After Democracy. Tell me about the book, and then we're going to talk about Afghanistan and see how much democracy you have over there.
Yes, actually, it's amusing because this term has been really thrown around without having seen the substance of it for the common people. That's where the book actually explains. It's a virtual tour of today's Afghanistan and shows to the world that all the rhetoric and cheering that the Bush administration was doing hardly resulted in anything but a total failure. And in the book, nonetheless, I provide an extended introduction followed by photographs, 105 color photographs I've taken in Afghanistan, exhibiting the life of regular folks, of orphans, of widows, including those many women that still wear burqas, the infamous burqa that they were talking about so vigorously in the beginning. Bombed villages, as well as congenital deformities, babies born due to uranium munitions used in Afghanistan. So the aim behind this project was so I could raise some funds for humanitarian projects in Afghanistan. In the past I have asked people to support orphans and others over there, and people kind of held back. And I thought maybe I could provide them with a concise overview or kind of a virtual tour of Afghanistan today. They would have a good product in their hand, and as a result they will buy it, and I would raise funds, and the funds could be used for the well-being of orphans, widows, and ultimately I was hoping I could build a small clinic / hospital. But it's been unfortunately disappointing thus far. Very few people have attempted to buy this, and in fact, a few occasions people send me emails saying, "Oh, we are scared, we can't buy your book." I told them, look, if there is anyone that supposedly should be, supposedly scared, should be and should be terrified of the consequences of this project, is going to be I. People tend to give excuses. If they do not wish to buy it, that's their prerogative. This is simply an attempt on my part to do something responsible, and I thought I had many talks with folks in Afghanistan when I went there, and in 2005 when I went initially there, I told them, look, in America they're good people, you can't equate the government with the people. The people are regular people like us, and they will help you out when I go, and I told them about your plight. And many people unfortunately start laughing at my claims and my optimism. And then when I went in 2006 in March, where I took these photos and so forth, the same people that were laughing at my optimism said, look, didn't we tell you that Americans won't help us and the common people? I told them, look, you can't just jump to conclusion. But honestly, there are decent, superb, great people that have contacted me and have shown their support, moral support or otherwise.
So,
but that's not enough.
So, Dr. Mohammed, the United States went there, and now you have democracy, you have a government. What's wrong with that?
Well, you see, the thing is this. In terms of classic U.S. post-conflict model that's supposed to serve as a benchmark of success, tells you, look, we went there, they have constitution, they have elections, they have a parliament. Remember, there's the same thing they have in Iraq, parliament, constitution, and so forth. See if you can walk down the street and with the hope that you will return back to your original destination. That rarely happens. So that exists in Afghanistan, but in terms of livelihood, nothing has been fulfilled. Absolutely
so
nothing has been
are you saying that things now are worse than they were under the Taliban?
Well, actually, we have to measure it in different contexts. In the Taliban period, everybody, very few people had anything, and including Taliban themselves. But primarily, when the U.S. was going there, they had a lot of hoopla about reconstruction and rebuilding. My research tells me that 86 cents in every dollar that the U.S. government supposedly donated to reconstruction in Afghanistan actually never materialized. It's a phantom aid. It ends up in the pocket of big corporations such as Halliburton and Brown and Root and others. And 47% of all the international so-called aid that goes to Afghanistan goes to overpriced technical assistance. That basically means consulting firm, NGOs who try to get fat and could care less what happens to Afghans. 2/3 of all so-called assistance goes to these various corporations, NGOs. 1/3 of that goes to the regime in Kabul, but barely can cover their own expense. And as a result, what happens is lack of housing, lack of health care, rotten sanitation, sanitary system is non-existent, crime rampant, and desperation and hopelessness serve as the benchmark for everyone.
Now, the last time you were here, which was a few months back, you mentioned that the government in Afghanistan hardly controls Kabul, which is the Kabul, the capital of Afghanistan. Is that still the same way?
Yeah, actually, probably a little worse than when I spoke last time about it. During the day, the government and the U.S. forces, try to control the highways and so forth and so on. But at night, the land is in the hands of resistance.
So it's very much like in Iraq. I mean, they control,
exactly like Iraq.
They control a little bit in Baghdad, and that's about it. Let's talk about the children. I know you have, in your book, you included some pictures of what happened with the depleted uranium. Tell me what's going on. Is it still going on there, and you still have Afghani children born with deformities?
Well, actually, it definitely is still going on, because remember, uranium has a half-life of, especially depleted uranium has a half-life 4.5 billion years. So nothing ceased overnight, nothing has stopped this tragedy. And as a result, what happens is that you have high rate of leukemia among adults, you have children born with esophageal cancers, right in their mother's womb. Women have developed various cancers. You have individuals with multiple cancers. You have children born that do not resemble human beings. In that I put in the last chapter of the book because I didn't want anybody to get shocked by it. But since I talked about Afghanistan after quote-unquote democracy, I had to give them the entire picture. I know some people would not like to look at those photos, but if they really want to get a sense of what Afghanistan appears at the present time, I think the book presents a very realistic portrayal of what life is like there.
So, 5 billion years, that's a lot more than probably humanity been on this earth. So,
well, actually, it's forever. Let's put it as that's forever. That's a problem that's going to be haunting us forever. All future generations are doomed, for a perpetual death and disaster. I approached senators here, government officials, and many people over here, and I, in fact, to get some project going. I was hoping we could build a research center with monitoring stations throughout Afghanistan and develop a dynamic database from that, so that could serve as a benchmark upon which we could initiate action that would be helpful or to some extent contribute to the longevity of people, lives and their situation. But so in 2006, in March when I was there, I secured a plot of land that I'm going to lose actually at the end of this month. And when of course, because I don't have the money to pay for it. And that land was intended that probably people could contribute and help out, and we could secure that land. It cost about $45,000 since the U.S. invasion. Real estate has gone through the roof. And the funny thing is this, that a young man, while after I secured the land, temporarily that is, a young man there told me that, don't worry, I think you will find the money. I told him, how is that? He said, I was watching this American movie in which a rich man had seen a child doing, having some surgical issues, the surgery that the child had to do, and he didn't have any money, the child family. And this rich man called in, he said, well, I'd like to pay, I don't know, $40, $50, whatever $1,000 for the surgery. And this man told me, I think somebody in America is going to do the same thing to you, for you. And I told him, listen, you've been watching too many movies.
Well, you never know. We still have a lot of good people.
I mean, there's no doubt
in the United States. So hopefully,
no doubt.
Hopefully, someone watching now will help. Now,
really
how can
so,
people get the book, Dr. Mohammed?
Actually, they could go to my website, www.afganistanafterdemocracy.com, all one word, and they can click on the order the book, and they can order it. What I was referring to my previous comment is that there are good people, there are great people here. I come across people every day that I truly get an appreciation of their perspective on issues and their support. But for those that can afford, we need more than lip service. And that needs to translate into tangible things. Money that could buy food, money that could build a leaking roof, money that could, get an orphan off the street into a shelter. As you can see in the book, we, chapter 3 and 4, 2 and 3 of the book are about the orphans in Kabul and surrounding areas.
Tell me about orphans in Kabul. How is it a big problem over there?
Yeah, there are more than around between 40 and 50,000 orphans in Kabul alone that have actually, most of them do not have a place to stay.
So these kids just live on the streets?
They live on the street. They, sleep in local cemeteries. They go sleep in bombed up buildings. Buildings that
Did Afghanistan have a problem before with children on the streets, homeless children?
We didn't have problems. We had some problems, not anything acute like that. What I mean by that is, during the Russian period, for example, many Afghans lost their lives, and what happened was those that became orphans would end up living with their extended family or so forth, and they would support them. But unfortunately, the so-called onset of capitalism has really affected people's mentality, and everyone is now for himself or herself, because everyone is running after quote-unquote money, when in fact no one is achieving that goal. But in the process, they ignore what could have been, But you see, the issue is this, that during the U.S. bombing, most of the bombing was done at night time. And 90% of the bombs initially, the initial bombing that was carried out, missed their target and ended up hitting residential areas. And, an interfaith group that was in Afghanistan returned, it said that in 5 of the 34 provinces in Afghanistan, more than 5,000 houses were destroyed in the initial bombing. So what that translates into is more disaster, because in Afghanistan a husband and wife do not live in a house. Usually an extended family, entire extended family lives in that house. And when they are asleep at night, of course, when they are clustered in the bedrooms, the few bedrooms that they have, when bombs hit them, they turn into smithereens, and all of them get perished. And then the few unlucky children that survive end up with nobody looking after them, and they simply become either prey to the criminal elements that tend to kidnap them for their bodily organs and sell their bodily organs to the highest bidder, or end up getting sold across the border for prostitution or some other disastrous consequence.
Now, the average United States citizen out there watching us tonight, basically saying, did we do anything good in Afghanistan?
No, actually not. Unfortunately, you see, basically it's this. You could have, I could have some really magic formula for a household, husband and wife or their family, and I could knock at their door and say, look, folks, I have a solution for your household problems, and you have to really accept the solution that's going to help you out. And the household, or the husband of the house, or the wife, or somebody will tell them, look, this is our household, you don't need your solution, we'll fix our own problems. But that's the whole thing. If you impose on people magic formulas that actually are nothing but total lies, result into disaster. And as a result of that, you just go and kill people, destroy their houses and bomb them and use weapon of mass destruction against them. And then you tell them, oh, well, by the way, be happy, we liberated you. Liberated me from what? Death? Life? I mean, primarily, these people have been subjected to disaster. And if that were not enough, they had to use weapon of mass destruction, uranium munition and so forth, and that would be haunting these people for generations upon generations to come. So if that is good, then certainly we have a different definition of good or something nice rather than what would, between the person that may call it.
Okay. Now, eventually, the United States, and probably soon, is going to probably leave Afghanistan. As it is, they don't call it the United States there, they call it the NATO's forces, but of course you know, and I know, that the NATO forces mainly is the United States over there.
Yeah, primarily.
Yes, primarily. So when they leave, what's going to happen in Afghanistan?
Well, it's not going to be anything new, because what the Afghans usually say, the Americans do not need us, or they just need our resources, or they need a point in time for their own purpose. So when they live in Afghanistan, and there is, of course, absolute certainty, because no one has really conquered Afghanistan throughout history, and once they do that, Afghans will be, what would they be doing? They will be dying from the poisons that were left behind by the U.S. forces.
What about like civil war?
Civil war actually will not happen in Afghanistan, at least, because at the present time when they had negotiations, Karzai offered talks with Taliban, and Taliban told them that, if you want to talk with us, and you really are sincere, why don't you tell the foreign forces to leave Afghanistan, then we can talk.
Okay.
Right now, some segments being, military segments, that like the Northern Alliance being with the U.S., that actually contributes to, disunity rather than unity in the country.
So how strong is Taliban now?
Taliban's control 2/3 of the country right now.
Okay.
But
what about?
You need to understand that these are not necessarily quote-unquote Taliban. There are various resistant groups that everybody tries to label them as Taliban. And there are Taliban, there are non-Taliban, but they primarily have the same goal, to just fight against the occupation and try to secure their land. That's it.
Now, of course, there's other, like you said, there's other forces in Afghanistan besides Taliban that are resisting the United States presence there. Is like Dostum in the north, is that still active? And
No, Dostam is, to put it in layman terms, he's a dog, Whomever gives him more money, he's gonna play their game. He has murdered a lot of people during the Russian period. He was a commander of militia, and now the puppet regime had granted him a, position in the Ministry of Defense simply to keep him in check.
Okay.
So these people, they have no backing or anything. They are out of the scene. But the point is this, that, the NATO has been having a lot of difficulties, fighting in various fronts, and whenever they have fought the resistance, and they pretty much failed and were essentially defeated, because as recent as a few weeks ago, when the British begged local elders to ask Taliban to let them retrieve and retreat from their initial positions, so Taliban don't destroy them on their way back to in Helmand province, and they essentially signed a truce.
Okay.
So things like that happen, and nobody talks about it here.
Okay. We're going to go to we're going to go to the phones. We have Freedom waiting. Go ahead, Freedom.
Dr. Miraki, I'm deeply disturbed. I am deeply disturbed at what you're saying, because they had the ambassador from Afghanistan on C-SPAN just a couple of weeks ago. He didn't mention anything about orphans. He mentioned how women were getting their education, how many of them now are out of the burqa, how Afghanistan and in Kabul, how it's well run under Hamid Karzai, the government, and how billions of dollars are going to the needs of the Afghani people. And you mean tonight you're going to tell the American people that what the ambassador was saying on C-SPAN is really not the truth? The only negative comment he made was that the warlords were under control, because now 90% of all the poppy being distributed throughout the world is now from Afghanistan, so the warlords are happy because they're making a lot of money on that drug. But you mean to tell me that inside the city of Kabul, where Hamid Karzai wear fancy suits and have a lot of bodyguards, that there are thousands of children who are sleeping on the streets and in bombed-out ships? I mean, nobody ever told us that before.
Well, the problem is this.
Have pictures to substantiate that, photographic pictures or anything?
Can I answer your question?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, let me answer your question. That's a good point you made, sir. Good question you posed. I speak to the ambassador, in fact, very often. When I came from Kabul in March, I called the ambassador, and I had really harsh exchange with him. I told him, if you truly are an Afghan and you are a man of dignity, stop working for Hamid Karzai. And I presented him with all the documentation. In fact, I faxed to the emailed, in fact, to the ambassador the statistics I observed in Kabul. Remember, the ambassador gets his info from Kabul, but I was in Kabul and I saw with my own eyes. And you see, there are two things we need to understand. First, if you're an investor, an ambassador, or somebody official, you always try to portray a very, rosy picture of the situation. After all, you're representing some, establishment, and you're entrusted with certain things to do. People like myself, I don't care about the establishment. What I care for is the common people. In order to fully understand and try to basically, get an objective opinion of what's really going on in Afghanistan, you don't need to believe me. In fact, you can go and do a search on the internet. You will get all these facts from the internet. What I have done in this book, primarily showing you the actual photos, the actual testimonies, and, you don't have to believe me. Simply look at it and you be the judge yourself. I mean, judge it yourself, and, if disagree with me, you can say, well, I do not agree with you. But the fact of the matter is, these statistics are all facts, and the first chapter in the book is all research-based, and you can follow the links and the resources I've utilized. The so-called women wearing burqas, the ambassador must be lying through his whatever if he's saying this. I have a chapter in the book that says burqas reconstruction, not burqas, matter to Afghan women. In that chapter, you'll see in Kabul, you see every woman, almost every woman, wearing burqas. Of course, there are women who do not wear burqa, but they cover themselves from head to toe. Just the face is exposed. One, and secondly, the women going to school, sure. But the point is this, that women going to school, they study in tents. Or the so-called schools being rebuilt, actually not so rebuilt. The school that usually supposed to cost about $10,000, a American company or so subcontract the school and, build it for a few $1,000s, and then they charge the funding agencies $500,000 to $1 million. That very school starts leaking and collapsing in the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And so these are prime examples how reconstruction has actually failed. No schools have sustained the elements. All of the schools that were being built basically have gotten cosmetic touches. Women actually, if you look also at the women's statistics, what's going on in Afghanistan, women are deprived in every way. One of the basic things among women that you should realize is that when in 5 or so women go through hellish pregnancies, they end up getting killed, that is by disease or conditions or some other disaster they come across. So what the ambassador had given a rosy picture, he is lying completely. And in fact, if you're doubting me, I can confront the ambassador on the show anytime.
Okay, Professor Miraki, we're going to go back to the phones with Dale on line 1. Go ahead, Dale.
Yes, I'm like the previous caller. What he's telling us is upsetting me tremendously. Does the Red Cross not go into that area? And in a nutshell, can he tell us what can we do as citizens of the United States that want to help people in Afghanistan? What can we do?
Okay.
Thank you.
The thing is, madam, that most of the development aid, so-called development aid, statistically speaking, 2/3 of the development aid goes to various agencies. There are NGOs, consulting firms, and so forth. Those NGOs, consulting firms, and so forth are in the business of making money. In fact, there is an NGO, for example, in eastern Afghanistan that gets $4 million a year to combat malaria. What they do at night, unfortunately, the NGO, they spray the standing water around Jalalabad in order to lure the mosquitoes, in order for the mosquitoes to come in, and so the mosquitoes could bite more people, and therefore the vicious circle continues, people having more malarias, and they will get their funding. All the various, there are about 2,000 plus NGOs, all of them simply have one thing in common: brand new 4-wheel drives, mansions, and fat salaries. And what you can do, as the common people in this country and so forth, need to do your investigation and find out what the truth is. I'm telling you, I'm doing my efforts on my part. I have produced this book solely for one purpose, so that I could build orphanages outside Kabul, as well as, for example, my hope ultimately is, of course, to build a hospital, but considering the magnitude of the lack of response I've gotten from the people in this country, I don't think I could even build a clinic, let alone a hospital, because the book is not sold, and people, they're not interested. The point is this, that if you truly want to know what Afghanistan is like today, and you could also see for yourself what Afghanistan appears, then my book is really a good source, because there are 105 photos, and 9 out of the 10 chapters are all photographs with explanations, and that certainly can refute the ambassador's talk or anybody else's portraying a rosy picture.
Well, I mean, I agree with you, Doctor, that the ambassador, I mean, what do we expect the ambassador to say? That no, things are bad? I mean, he will be on the next plane to Kabul.
No kidding. Yeah.
That's, if they send him to Kabul, they'll probably send him to one of these CIA secret prisons. Now, when do you think, because, Afghanistan is not in the news like Iraq, but when do you think, how long do you think the United States will be in Afghanistan?
Well, the United States actually subcontracted its dirty work to NATO, and NATO is now trapped in Afghanistan.
Yeah, but I mean, primarily, the men on the ground, I don't care what you want to call them.
Right.
They're Americans.
They won't last long, in fact, in Afghanistan. You see, in order to fully and objectively answer that question, we need to simply do a small, short survey of Afghan history. The Russians invaded Afghanistan with more than 200,000 soldiers, and thousands of tanks, aircraft, and so forth. The Afghans fought against them for 10 years, and finally the Russians retreated, humiliated. The British in the 19th century attacked Afghanistan 3 times, and the second time they lost about 16,000 soldiers in one day. The U.S. casualty also I talk about in the book is hardly mentioned in the media, just say about 200 or so American soldiers being killed in Afghanistan. There are more than 1,700 soldiers killed in Afghanistan, American soldiers that is, in this war that they do not talk about it and try to suppress it. It seems to me that to fully answer that question, we need to look at the hope and lack of hope in Afghanistan. There is absolutely no hope for the common people. So the U.S. could, have its armada as many times as they want and so-called military force, but that military force has a very short sustainability period outside Kabul. Wherever they go, they get attacked one way or another. And within the city also, last few months, you saw there were riots against U.S. forces.
Now, Professor Miraki, I want you to step outside of the box now and think as what America has accomplished for America by going to Afghanistan.
Well, simple. It's a very simple answer for this. The U.S. has really contributed heavily to the recruitment of militant organizations, so-called terrorist organizations. They call many people who have lost their, in the book you'll see many kids that I interview, and I ask them what they want to do when they grow up, and they say, we want to avenge our parents' death. What the U.S. has done is they have created more, quote-unquote, suicide bombers and individuals that just want to come after the Americans. So in terms of security, it has failed utterly.
What about this oil pipeline that's supposed to go through Afghanistan? Is that...
That's actually a hollow dream that's going to be there just as a dream. It's not going to happen. Because for a pipeline to exist, you have to have security. And in fact, the U.S. forces cannot travel on the highway without helicopter support. How could possibly a pipeline be built and extended for thousands of miles, hundreds of miles? And also, if you look at Iraq, in Iraq, they've been trying very, very hard to extend to get the oils and so forth, but unfortunately they haven't produced anything. They haven't gotten anything.
Okay, Dr. Miraki, we're coming to the end of the show, but I really have to ask you this question, and I need a quick answer. How big and how strong was Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan? I mean, like when you go through the streets of Kabul, you see people with Al-Qaeda. Tell me about Al-Qaeda and Afghanistan.
Well, actually, people currently, first and foremost, Al-Qaeda is, is just a created name. Really, it was a name created in 1998, and then so-called folks adopted that name because they were being labeled Al-Qaeda. People do not really care about Al-Qaeda or any other Qaeda. The only thing they care for is survival. And that prospect of survival is simply reduced to zero. And when you have eliminated all options of survival and hopes, what happens is people tend to resort to revenge and try to become militant.
So you say,
or any other organization have plenty of recruits now.
So you're saying Al-Qaeda was exaggerated a lot by the United States?
In fact, because when they wanted to prosecute, bin Laden in 1998 for the bombing of embassies in Africa, under the mob rules in the law, that there is a clause that there has to be, the individual in question has to have an organization that in order for him to be prosecuted. So what happened is the U.S. government and the intelligence agencies labeled this thing Al-Qaeda. Remember, they are the intelligence agency and they can create names. And that name has been labeled on bin Laden and his people in order to facilitate procedure-wise the paperwork to prosecute him for the bombing in Africa. So, but they ended up accepting the labels and they've been called Al-Qaeda, Al-Qaeda, Al-Qaeda.
Very good, very clear. Dr. Miraki, I just want to thank you for coming on the program, and hopefully,
I appreciate it.
Hopefully, we will have some people who will write you and get these books. I think it will be excellent books for people to see what's going on in Afghanistan. Thank you, sir, for being on the program.
I hope so. Thank you so much.
Take
care now.
Thanks. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is the clear picture. We are showing you what's going on, what we have done in Afghanistan. Now, the rest is up to you. His book is Afghanistan After Democracy.com, and you can go there and see the book and order the book. I think it will be, it will do you a lot of good. Hopefully, it will make you get off that couch and do something to help these people that we have destroyed, and probably for the rest of their lives, especially with this depleted uranium. You've seen the pictures, and you've seen what happened to these children. So write him up and get that book. I think you will. That's the least you can do. You're paying a lot of money for this war. So anyhow, when we come back, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be speaking with Ted Pike about hate laws and what they are. Why is he fighting them? Are they good for us? Are they bad? We don't know. We're going to definitely tackle that with him and see if we are a hateful, racist nation. So don't go too far. We will be right back with Ted Pike. See you then.
Hi, I'm Cindy Brown. I'm representing the Louisiana Violence Prevention Alliance. All of us should play a part in our communities to work towards nonviolence. Students bringing guns to school should certainly be a wake-up call to our area. We need to realize that violence is not acceptable no matter where it occurs.